This woman, her name is Avery, and she was absolutely convinced she had found the one. A military man who talked about building a real future together. A man who brought her home to meet his parents. A man who shared his life, his home, and his dreams with her. But the moment she told him what she truly wanted for their future, he vanished in the middle of the night without leaving so much as a note behind. What she did next would change everything. And whether you think she was right or wrong, this story will stay with you long after it ends. I am Emma, your storyteller, and welcome back to Mrs. Emma. Today we are diving deep into a relationship that seemed perfect on the surface but shattered the moment one conversation got too real. This is a story about love, timing, expectations, and what happens when two people want completely different things but refuse to admit it until it is far too late. So settle in, because this one is going to take you on an emotional journey you were not expecting. Avery was 24 years old and working in food services on a military base in Phoenix, Arizona. She had heard all the warnings about dating military men. Her friends told her stories. Her co-workers shared their experiences. Everyone seemed to have a cautionary tale about soldiers who would sweet-talk their way into your heart and then disappear the moment deployment orders came through. But Jared seemed different from all of those other guys. He was not looking for something casual or temporary. From the very beginning, he talked about real things, serious things. He spoke about getting out of the military together someday. He talked about building something meaningful that would last. He was not just living in the moment like so many others she had met. He was planning for a future, and he wanted her to be part of it. After dating for several months, they made the decision to move in together. They secured a place in base housing, and for Avery, it felt like the most stable her life had ever been. She finally had a partner who understood the military lifestyle without her having to explain every little detail. She had someone to share expenses with, someone to come home to, someone who made her feel like she belonged somewhere. They developed a comfortable routine together. Jared would finish his shift, and Avery would already be home from the kitchen. They would spend their evenings together in easy companionship. There was no constant fighting. There were no jealousy issues or dramatic arguments. It was the kind of relationship that actually felt sustainable. And Avery started to believe she had finally found one of the good ones. She was smart about certain things, though. She kept her finances completely separate from his. She had her own bank account, her own car payment, her own personal expenses that she handled independently. Jared never pushed her about merging their money, which she appreciated. He covered most of the bigger household bills since his military salary was higher than hers, and she took care of her own responsibilities. The arrangement worked perfectly for both of them. As the months passed, Avery found herself thinking more and more about the future. Not just their future as a couple, but the bigger picture. Marriage, family, children, all of those things that come next when you have found the person you want to spend your life with. And Jared seemed to be on the same page. He nodded along when she mentioned these things. He agreed when she talked about what their life could look like down the road. He never said no to any of it. He just always added one small phrase that would eventually become the source of everything that went wrong between them. He would say, someday. One thing that Avery could not stop thinking about was the incredible benefits that came with military life. Jared's insurance covered everything. Medical care, dental care, all of it taken care of without the financial burden that most civilian families struggled with. And if they ever had children together, those kids would be set for life. Free healthcare, educational opportunities, a built-in support system that most people could only dream about. She started noticing the other military families around them on base. Women her age, some even younger, who were already on their second babies. They had this whole community supporting them. They had stable housing and guaranteed income. Their husbands deployed and came home to happy families who had been taken care of the entire time they were gone. It looked amazing to Avery. It looked like exactly what she wanted for herself. The more she observed these families, the more she started questioning why exactly she and Jared were waiting. They already had everything in place. They had the housing, they had the benefits. They had stable income from both of their jobs. They had a solid relationship that had proven itself over nearly a year of living together. What were they waiting for exactly? Some magical moment when everything would feel even more perfect than it already was? Some imaginary checklist that needed more items crossed off before they could take the next step? Jared always gave her the same answer when she brought up having children. He wanted to wait until they were both out of the military. He wanted to be present for his kids, not constantly deploying and missing important moments. He wanted them to have normal civilian schedules before they took on the responsibility of being parents. It sounded reasonable when he explained it that way. Avery understood his logic on an intellectual level, but emotionally, it started to feel like an excuse, like a way to keep pushing the conversation further and further into the future without ever actually committing to a real timeline. Someday started to feel less like a promise and more like a way to avoid making any actual decisions. When Avery turned 24, something shifted inside her. She started feeling a new sense of urgency about her life plans that she had never experienced before. She knew that 24 probably sounded young to people outside the military world, but things were different on base. She was surrounded by women her age and younger who were already raising families. Her biological clock was not necessarily ticking, but her patience certainly was. She started bringing up the conversation more directly with Jared, not hinting anymore, not casually mentioning hypothetical future children. She was asking specific questions about timelines. Where did he see them in 2 years? In 5 years? When exactly did he think he would feel ready to start a family? And every single time, Jared gave her the same rehearsed response. He wanted to be present for his children. He did not want to be deployed constantly during their early years. He wanted to wait until they could both be civilians with regular schedules. The same words, the same arguments, the same refusal to commit to anything concrete. It started to drive Avery crazy because Jared was already acting like a husband in every other way. He had introduced her to his parents. They talked about getting married after his military contract ended. He planned his entire life around the assumption that they would be together long term. He was completely committed to her in every way except the one that actually mattered most to her. Why was he so willing to plan for a future together while simultaneously refusing to take the one step that would make that future real? Avery watched other couples around her who seemed to be making it work just fine. Men who deployed and came home to wives and babies and seemed genuinely happy and complete. Families that thrived within the military system instead of treating it like an obstacle to be overcome before real life could begin. She started to feel like Jared was keeping her in permanent girlfriend status when she was ready to be a wife and mother. Not that she needed a fancy wedding to have a baby, but she needed to know that he was as invested in their actual future as she was. She needed to know that he was not just comfortable with their current situation, but actually excited to build something more. The more Avery thought about it, the more frustrated she became. They had everything they needed. They were both healthy, both employed with steady income, both committed to each other for the long haul. The entire military system was designed to support families exactly like the one they could become. What exactly were they waiting for? For Jared to magically wake up one day and feel perfectly ready? Some guys needed a push to realize they actually wanted something they had been too scared to commit to. Avery decided it was time to stop dancing around the subject. One evening after dinner, in the quiet comfort of their shared home, Avery decided to lay everything out on the table. No more hints, no more casual conversations about hypothetical futures. She needed Jared to understand exactly where she stood and what her timeline actually looked like. She told him directly that she wanted to start actively trying for a baby, not in 2 years, not whenever he finally felt ready enough, now. She explained her reasoning calmly and clearly. She was 24 years old, her body was ready. They had incredible benefits and support systems already in place. She did not see the point in waiting anymore when everything they needed was right in front of them. She was not asking him to propose immediately or do anything dramatic. She just wanted him to stop overthinking every detail and actually start building the future they had been talking about for months. Jared's reaction was immediate and exactly what she had feared. He got tense. He got defensive. He started reciting the same speech she had heard dozens of times before. He wanted to be present for his children. He did not want to be deployed constantly during their formative years. He wanted to wait until they were both out of the military with regular civilian schedules, word for word, like he had the entire thing memorized. That was when Avery made a decision that would change the course of their entire relationship. She told him the complete truth. She said she was ready to move forward with having a baby right now. And if he was not ready to be part of that, she would figure it out on her own. She made it clear that this was not a threat or some kind of manipulation tactic. It was simply a fact about her life and her plans. She was not a helpless woman who needed a man's permission to have a child. She had her own income, her own benefits through her job, her own support network on base. She would obviously prefer to do this with Jared because she loved him. But she was not going to sit around waiting indefinitely for him to work through whatever fears were holding him back. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. Avery watched Jared's face change as he finally realized she was being completely serious. This was not about hypothetical future babies anymore. This was about actively trying to get pregnant in the next few months, whether he decided to participate in that process or not. Jared did not take the news well. In fact, he completely lost control of himself. He started raising his voice, accusing Avery of being manipulative and irrational. He said she was trying to trap him into something he was not ready for. He accused her of ambushing him with this ultimatum when they had never agreed to any specific timeline. Avery sat there listening to his outburst, and something inside her went cold and calm. She pointed out the obvious flaw in his logic. How exactly was she trying to trap him when she had literally just offered to do the entire thing without him? If anything, she was giving him a complete exit from any responsibility. She was not demanding he commit to fatherhood. She was simply telling him what she planned to do with her own life and her own body. But Jared could not see it that way. To him, her independent decision about her own future felt like a personal attack on him specifically. He went on a long, dramatic speech about how having a baby right now would ruin their entire future together. How he would be stuck and miserable. How he could never be the kind of father he wanted to be while still on active duty. How she was being unreasonable and impulsive and not thinking about the consequences. And Avery just sat there, watching the man she thought she knew completely fall apart in front of her. This was exactly why she needed to stop waiting for his permission, she realized. Jared was so consumed by his fears and his need for everything to be absolutely perfect that he could not see the incredible opportunity right in front of them. They had everything any couple could want: benefits, housing, stable income, a solid relationship foundation. But he was so terrified of not being the perfect father that he was willing to waste years of their lives waiting for some fantasy scenario that might never actually exist. Avery tried to stay calm. She tried to be reasonable. She explained again that she was not trying to manipulate him or force him into anything. She was just being honest about what she wanted and what she was planning to do with her life. But Jared kept acting like her biological timeline and personal goals were somehow an attack on him. Like everything in their relationship had to revolve around his comfort level and his fears, and she was being selfish for wanting something different. Finally, Avery reached her breaking point. She told him she was going to start trying to get pregnant. That was her decision, and it was final. If he did not want to be part of that journey, he was free to walk away. Not because she was throwing him out, but because she refused to pretend she did not want what she wanted just to protect his feelings. What Jared said next revealed exactly who he really was underneath all the loving boyfriend behavior. He told her that if she was going to be that way about it, maybe she should just find someone else to have a baby with. He said it like it was supposed to hurt her, like it was supposed to make her back down and apologize and beg him to stay, like the threat of losing him would be enough to make her abandon her own dreams and desires. But Avery did not back down. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Maybe I will." Because why should she not? If Jared was not ready to step up and be the partner she needed, why should she waste more of her precious time waiting for him to grow up and figure out what he actually wanted from life? Jared did not speak another word to her for the rest of that night. He just sat there in stunned silence, looking shocked and hurt, as if Avery had said something completely unreasonable, instead of simply being honest about her own life plans. But Avery meant every single word she had said. And when she went to bed that night, she felt clearer about her situation than she had in months. She had finally stopped pretending and told him exactly what she wanted. If Jared could not handle being with a woman who knew her own mind, then he definitely was not the right person to start a family with. Sometimes the hardest conversations reveal the most important truths. When Avery woke up the next morning, Jared was already gone. His car was not in the driveway. When she checked their closet, she discovered that a bunch of his clothes and personal belongings had vanished during the night. There was no note left on the kitchen counter. No text message on her phone. No explanation of any kind. He had simply disappeared like someone who could not handle having one difficult adult conversation. And here is the thing that surprised even Avery herself. Her first reaction was not sadness. It was not regret about losing the relationship she had invested so much time and emotion into. Her first reaction was pure relief. Jared had finally shown her his true character. He was the kind of person who would literally run away in the middle of the night the moment things got challenging or uncomfortable. He had revealed himself to be someone who avoided difficult conversations, instead of working through them like a mature adult. Avery realized in that moment that she had actually dodged a massive bullet. It was far better to find out now who Jared really was than to waste more years waiting for him to mature into the partner she deserved. She went to work that day acting completely normal, like nothing significant had even happened. When her coworkers asked where Jared was, she simply told them they were taking some space to figure out their different priorities, which was technically the complete truth if you thought about it. The housing situation was slightly complicated since both of their names were on the lease agreement, but Avery figured they would work out those practical details eventually, whenever Jared decided to start behaving like a grown adult again. He could come collect the rest of his things whenever he was ready to have a mature conversation about their living arrangements. Over the next few days, Avery did a lot of soul-searching about what she wanted her life to look like going forward. And the more she thought about everything that had happened, the more convinced she became that she had been absolutely right all along. She was ready to start a family. She had everything necessary to make it work successfully, and she definitely did not need Jared's permission or approval to make decisions about her own future. If he wanted to be part of that future, he knew exactly where to find her. If not, she was perfectly capable of figuring things out independently. She even started researching resources available for single parents on base, just to see what kind of support systems existed. What she discovered actually surprised her. There was an incredible amount of assistance available for military families, including those headed by single parents. The benefits were just as comprehensive. The housing options were still available. And there were plenty of other single mothers around who could offer practical advice and emotional support. Avery started to feel hopeful about her future for the first time since that terrible conversation with Jared. She was not dependent on him to achieve her goals. She never had been. Jared finally came back 3 days after his middle-of-the-night disappearing act. He showed up at their shared home to collect more of his belongings, and he looked absolutely terrible. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he had not been sleeping properly. He seemed thinner, like he had not been eating regular meals. Everything about his appearance screamed that the past few days had been rough on him. Part of Avery felt a small twinge of sympathy seeing him in that condition, but mostly she just felt annoyed at how overly dramatic he was being about the whole situation. She tried to have a rational adult conversation with him. She wanted to know if he was ready to discuss their future seriously, now that he had some time away to process everything. But Jared could only repeat the same phrases he had been using all along. He needed more time to think. She had blindsided him with her timeline. He was not ready to make such a huge life decision so quickly. Exactly what Avery had expected him to say. She realized in that moment that Jared was probably never going to feel ready for anything. He was too scared to take real risks or commit to anything permanent. He wanted to keep playing house indefinitely, enjoying all the comforts and benefits of a serious relationship without ever actually stepping up to make it official or take things to the next level. Avery told him calmly that his choice was perfectly fine with her, but she was not going to sit around waiting while he spent months or years trying to decide what he wanted. She had her own life to live and her own decisions to make about her future. If Jared wanted to be part of that life, he needed to make up his mind soon. Otherwise, she was moving forward with her plans regardless of whether he was involved or not. Jared packed up the rest of his clothes and personal items without saying much else. Avery could tell he was hoping she would change her mind or beg him to stay. But she was not about to do that. Jared had made his choice when he decided his comfort zone was more important than their relationship. He would have to live with the consequences of running away instead of working through their differences like two mature adults. Within a week, Jared had moved out completely. Word on base was that he was staying in the barracks like some fresh recruit who had never learned how to handle adult responsibilities. Avery heard through mutual friends that Jared was miserable, that he regretted leaving, that he missed what they had built together during their time as a couple. But as far as Avery was concerned, it was far too late for regrets. Jared had made his decision crystal clear when he chose to abandon their relationship rather than work through one disagreement about timing. She had given him every possible opportunity to step up and be the partner she needed. He had chosen to run away instead of having difficult conversations. Avery started putting herself back out there. She attended social events on base and made an effort to meet new people who were actually interested in building something real. There were plenty of single men around who were ready for genuine commitment and starting families. Not like Jared, who wanted to wait forever for some perfect moment that would never actually arrive. About 2 months after everything fell apart, Avery started seeing someone new, a contractor who worked on base. He was older than Jared, more established in his career, and significantly more mature. Most importantly, he was actually ready for the things Avery wanted out of life. He did not make excuses or push conversations about the future into some vague someday. And honestly, Avery was happier than she had been in a very long time. She felt more confident without Jared's constant anxiety and need to control every detail of their shared timeline. She felt free to pursue what she actually wanted instead of waiting for someone else's permission. When Jared found out that Avery was in a new relationship, he completely lost his composure. He started calling her constantly at all hours. He sent long, rambling text messages filled with emotions and accusations. He even showed up at her workplace, trying to force conversations she had no interest in having. He acted like Avery had somehow betrayed him by moving forward with her life after he had been the one to abandon their relationship, as if she was supposed to sit around indefinitely waiting for him to decide whether he wanted to be with her or not. It was honestly pathetic to witness, and a little bit frightening too. The possessiveness that emerged once Jared realized she was not crying over him was completely unexpected. This was not the calm, reasonable man she thought she had been living with for almost a year. The situation escalated to the point where Avery had to contact base security to make him stop harassing her at work. It was embarrassing to have to take that step, but it was absolutely necessary for her peace of mind and safety. That experience showed Avery just how much she had dodged a bullet with Jared. The man she had believed was stable and mature turned out to be a scared, controlling person who could not handle being with a woman who knew what she wanted. He would rather try to manipulate and pressure her than actually step up and be the partner she deserved. Everyone around them could see clearly that Avery was so much better off without him. Within 6 months of their breakup, Jared was transferred to another military base. The official reason was probably something routine and career-related, but everyone who knew the situation understood the real truth. He could not handle seeing Avery happy and successful without him. He could not stand watching her build the life she wanted while he remained stuck in the same place, still making the same excuses about not being ready. Last Avery heard through the gossip network that connects everyone in military circles, Jared was still single, still not ready for anything serious with anyone. Still making the same excuses about timing and wanting everything to be perfect before he could commit. Some people just never learn, she supposed. Meanwhile, Avery was building exactly the life she had always envisioned for herself. She was not sitting around waiting for someone else to give her permission to be happy and fulfilled. She was taking charge of her own future and making her own decisions. Looking back on everything that happened, Avery realized that she had learned something incredibly valuable from her relationship with Jared. Sometimes you have to be willing to let go of something that seems good in order to find something that is actually right for you. Sometimes the person you think you are building a future with is actually the person holding you back from that future. And sometimes having the courage to say exactly what you want, even when it might cost you everything, is the only way to find out who really belongs in your life. Jared was not a bad person. He was just someone who was not ready for the same things Avery was ready for. And instead of being honest about that incompatibility from the beginning, he kept her waiting in limbo with vague promises about someday. The moment Avery stopped accepting someday as an answer was the moment she took back control of her own life. Not everyone will agree with how she handled things. Some people might think she was too aggressive or too demanding. Others might think she should have been more patient and given Jared more time to come around. But Avery knew her own heart and her own timeline. She knew what she wanted, and she was not willing to keep pretending otherwise just to make someone else comfortable. Sometimes you have to cut loose the people who are not moving in the same direction you are moving. Sometimes you have to prioritize your own dreams over someone else's fears. And sometimes the person who leaves you is actually doing you the biggest favor of your entire life, even if it does not feel that way in the moment. So, there you have it, everyone. The story of Avery, A 24-year-old woman who decided she was done waiting for someday and discovered exactly who her partner really was in the process. Was she right to give Jared an ultimatum about starting a family? Was she wrong to move forward with her plans without his full support? Those are questions only you can answer for yourself. What we know for certain is that Avery refused to put her entire life on hold while waiting for someone else to feel ready. She made a choice about her own future, and she accepted the consequences of that choice, both the painful ones and the liberating ones. Sometimes relationships end not because anyone did anything wrong, but simply because two people discover they want fundamentally different things at fundamentally different times. And when that happens, someone has to be brave enough to say it out loud. Avery was that someone. I am Emma, and I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me today on Mrs. Emma. If this story touched your heart or made you think about your own relationships and life choices, please take just a moment to hit that like button down below. It really does help this channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you these incredible stories. Share this video with a friend who might need to hear this message today. You never know who in your life might be struggling with similar questions about their own future and their own relationships. And most importantly, if you have not already, please subscribe to Mrs. Emma and click that notification bell so you never miss a single one of these stories. I release new content regularly, and I would hate for you to miss out on the next emotional journey we take together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you deserve to be with someone who wants the same future you want, not someone who keeps you waiting for someday. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. This has been Mrs. Emma, your storyteller, signing off.